back in the saddle.
Must be nice. Just pick up and leave the country for a few weeks. But, hey, we are glad to have you back. Let's start with some of the good news that happened while you were gone. Southern Miss played well in a couple of games. They're sitting at 5 wins overall. And obviously last week didn't go well. But if you go back to, week 9 for Southern Miss, they get the win. And play really well during that week. So maybe kind of a bigger picture look before we kind of drill down on last week's game where things obviously didn't go well.
Yeah, I mean, you're 5-4. I had to remind myself that at this point last year, you had just got drilled 38-14 at home against North Texas, and you were 1-8. Same situation. Taki's out for the year in both situations. So you're looking at where you are now, and you played really good on national television against the Louisiana team. You won 5 out of the last 6. And let's just be honest, Richard, there's so much parity in the Sun Belt this year. Everybody gets destroyed and has a game that they wish they could flush, and it happened to Southern Miss. The Troy game wasn't like that. But this was a game that, if you played it 15 times, you were probably going to lose it 15 times. And I think, what stands
388 yards rushing is just pops off the page.
Yeah. But if you look back at the previous 3 weeks, they had given up 50 yards rushing. They gave up -6 against Texas State and 69 against Louisiana. So, I mean, it was Texas State, studied that and found a creak in the armor, attacked the Eagles on the outside, and then had their way up the middle. So it was bound to happen. And when you look at what Coastal did, I mean, Coastal got drilled by Old Dominion a few weeks back. So the Sun Belt's had a lot of parity this year.
Yeah, it certainly has. And so you look to the game that is coming up this week. Got to go on the road to Conway, South Carolina, to take on Coastal Carolina. The Chanticleers, first trip for Southern Miss to Conway, about half an hour away from Myrtle Beach. And this is one of those that we were talking about when the transition to the Sun Belt happened. Trips like this to Coastal Carolina against an established program that's been really good under Jamie Chadwell, but really big news this week as well that Grayson McCall is out for an extended period of time. I think Borky told me 3 to 6 weeks. So you catch a little bit of a break with an experienced quarterback not playing.
Yeah, good job on the pronunciation, by the way. First time we had Coastal people on the Eagle Hour, we said Chanticleers, and we were corrected. It's the Sean. So good job on the Chanticleer. But yeah, probably around noon today, they announced that he had a foot injury from Appalachian State last week. He's out 3 to 6 weeks. Will Hall got asked about that today, and they're preparing for the system because, I mean, the backup, Bryce Carpenter, he's a fifth-year guy. Before McCall started in 2020, he threw for around 900 yards and rushed for, I think, 400 yards that year. He's got 800 career rushing yards, and he's completed, I think, 64% of his passes, got a touchdown ratio of 18 TDs to 5 picks. So they're preparing for a system. Obviously, McCall is one of the best QBs in the conference, but, I mean, Carpenter can run and throw the ball. And so Will Hall got asked today about that. They're just going to prepare for that system because they know what they can do on offense. And so while it may not be McCall, you still, I think a lot of teams would take this guy as a backup for sure.
So this is probably, to use a term from earlier in the show today, a little Pollyanna, but we'll go Pollyanna for a second. If Southern Miss finishes strong, they are able to get the win on the road against Coastal. I think it's ULM at the very end, and between that you got South Alabama. Alabama, a game ahead in the conference standings. So with a win there, you could get a tiebreaker. You got to have some help on the Troy front, right? Because Troy would have to lose 2 more times to jump ahead of them. Is that a reasonable way to be looking at this down the stretch, or is it, forget about that. Yes, you want to play for a conference title. It's probably not likely this year. This is about just getting win number 6 and making sure you're bowl eligible.
Yeah, I think probably how last year we had these heightened expectations going into the season, and then there was disappointment. I feel like when you're in the middle of a 3-game winning streak and you dominate Louisiana on national television, what happens is then those expectations start creeping back up. And probably, yeah. And I mean, probably if you would look at a track record, you go 3-9, and man, if you're 6-6 the next year, like you're happy. And I think probably people forgot what they were thinking back in early September, when you had that 3-game winning streak, in the middle. Troy, they got Arkansas State, and I think ULM left. ULM's pulled a surprise before, but Troy, I don't think that the Eagles can catch up on that. So, I mean, without Grayson McCall this weekend, kind of the line on this one closed from like 11 to like 5 points in like 2 hours. So, Eagles, you got a better chance than what you had. And if you can get 2 out of this last 3, you're at 7 wins. And I think I told you that coming into the season. If Southern Miss were to get to 7 wins, like, you should, be just super excited.
Yeah, and understandably so. I mean, getting to bowl eligibility, anything beyond that feels like gravy to me in this year. What's the mood, Luke, among Southern Miss fans? I mean, there was obviously a lot of excitement during the winning streak that you were talking about. Kind of come back to earth. Maybe a little bit of the air goes out of the balloon after kind of getting popped last week. But overall, needed to see progress this year. Feel like progress has been made. What's the mood?
Yeah, I mean, people just have to keep reminding themselves. And, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you're doing all this with a true freshman quarterback. And Lang's come in the last two weeks. They haven't, run a lot of the super back. They've run the super back, but not like what they did last year. And you feel like, you're half a hit down without, your starting quarterback to go into the season. And so I think perspective is what Southern Miss fans are trying to do right now. They just got really excited, during that, like you said. I think this weekend, to be honest, I mean, I think you're going to see a variety of people. Trey Lowe could play a lot. On the depth chart this week, there's 2 ors. It's Zach Wilkie or Jake Lang or Trey Lowe. They're all in bold. And, Will kind of tongue-in-cheek said, we're going to play everybody. It's going to be fun. And I think that's his way of saying they're going to probably try to limit some of Coastal's possessions by more super backing it, maybe more than they have all year.
All right, so what about some of the comments about transfer portal quarterbacks? He said we've not played very well at quarterback all year. He does go on to say we signed 2 really good young quarterbacks since we've been here. We've gone after some high-end quarterbacks that we didn't get. The transfer portal is not a magic wand. You don't just go into the portal and get a quarterback. Most of the quarterbacks in the portal are not very good. That's why they're in the portal. They weren't very good where they were at. I'm not sure that I'm on board with that sentiment, especially when you look around the country and you see like half the starting quarterbacks in the country were in the transfer portal at some point. You see what Jaden Daniels is doing at LSU. You see what Jackson Dart's doing at Ole Miss. You see what Hendon Hooker's doing at Tennessee. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. They've got to get a transfer quarterback in the portal. They have to. Last year, the Miles Brennan smoke didn't work out. There's a little rumbling about Plumlee, but, nothing. They've got to go out and land somebody because if you can get hurt at the quarterback position and have your, quarterback room, shook up, it's going to happen at Southern Miss. And unfortunately, that's what's happened. And, the T-Web transfer never panned out. I do think, though, that's going to – the fan base is going to – you're going to hear that. And I think the coaching staff knows they've got to land a seasoned transfer quarterback to at least put out some, fires in the fan base. Because that's what people felt this last year.
Yeah, any news on the NIL front with Southern Miss, how that's going in terms of kind of building the ability to in a lot of cases you got to dangle that carrot if you're talking about a transfer portal.
They've got some collectives going that they've announced. The athletic department does have that in motion. Recently, Frank Gore got a for a group of 5 athlete got a pretty good deal with some local businesses and stuff. So yeah, I mean they're doing their best to put that forward. They recognize that. But at the same time, you've got to look at when your backup quarterback is a walk-on, and has
Yeah.
been for the last several weeks. I mean, you just have to address it. But, I mean, you say all of that, and they're one game away from being bowl eligible. So I think that speaks to what Will Hall's doing at Southern Miss, and I think that's why at the end of the day, even though from the frustration, the people are giving him benefit of the doubt, as they should.
Luke, thanks as always. Great to catch up. It's been too long, and glad to have you back home safe.